Hello and welcome to today's session in the PowerDraw Technical Webinar Series. Today's the 99th session of the series, and I'm really pleased to have Turgut Genc to talk to you about some of the lab services, tools and assets for power systems that you may or may not be familiar with. We've been talking about this for a little while, and it took me a little while to set this session up. So I'm really pleased that Turgut could take some time out of his really busy schedule to deliver this session today. So without further ado, over to you, Turgut.
Thank you very much, Jyoti, for providing this session and the slot. The pleasure is mine to be here, and I would like to welcome everyone to this call, wherever you are, what time it is. I really appreciate your time here. Especially the ones early risers and the late nighters like myself. So without further ado, I will introduce myself. My name is Turgut. My first name is Turgut. I'm from Istanbul, Turkey originally, but I'm based in the UK. I'm part of lab services team. I'm a senior consultant in lab services team, and I'm the lead consultant in EMEA in a couple of areas, including lab services tools. You can see my connection information in the screen. Please don't hesitate contacting me over my email or Twitter or Slack channels or even LinkedIn. So today's topic is lab services tools, but before going into the lab services tools, it might be better if we review who we are, what we do as lab services. Obviously, I will not read this to you. You can review the slide yourself. But as lab services organization, we are a team of experts. We have the expertise around infrastructure to build the foundation of smart enterprises. We have a team of consultants for cognitive systems and team of consultants for mainframes and storage systems. We are accelerating the adoption of technology across the world. We promote best practices and we share our experience. Personally, I've been working for lab services team more than 10 years now. Started in Turkey, followed in the UK, but more importantly, we don't belong to a single location. We travel most of the time. We are a mobile and agile team. Personally, I had the pleasure to visit so many clients across the world, more than 30 different countries. So we bring this experience across the world. We are collaborating with everybody, with the clients, business partners, system integrators, and other IBMers too. So today is about lab services tools. I will talk about almost all of them, but as Jyoti mentioned before, the tools I'm going to mention here, mostly applicable in the platform level, not specific to operating systems, but some of them will be specific to AIX and virtualized servers. Okay, so the lab services tools, obviously developed by IBM Lab Services consultants. Okay, we own these tools, we develop these tools. Why we develop these tools and when we develop these tools, when we are engaging with clients, we see the client struggles. Sometimes clients ask us questions to, hey, can you assist us in this? How can we make this better or improve the process? So we try to address clients' needs while simplifying and automating their process with a tool. While providing enhancements to the existing capabilities, we might be bringing in capabilities useful for migration, maintenance, monitoring, or documentation purposes. We always deliver these tools with an engagement. We don't hand over them. We require lab services engagement because we need to make sure that whoever uses the tool, our correspondent knows the details of the usage of the tool. Okay, but we need to make sure you know how to use the tool properly. That is why we need an engagement to deliver. Most of the tools are free with an engagement. There is one exception to that, LPM and SRR Automation Toolkit, which requires an enterprise license to be purchased before having an engagement with lab services. The delivery engagement covers, the costs can be covered with different means, might be power to cloud reverse program or might be a direct contract. Personally, I'm a technical consultant. I'm not dealing with the contracts, obviously. You should work with our opportunity managers in your location to access to the tools. If you have a question, if you don't know your correct people to get in touch with, don't hesitate contacting me. I will channel your efforts and make sure you are contacting with the right people. So I categorize the tools in 3 different sections. First section is the migration, but that does not necessarily mean these tools are not useful for other means. The first tool I'm going to mention is LPM and SRR Automation Toolkit, which has been developed many years ago. Since then, have been evolving and delivered all around the world, across the globe, more than 500 different clients. It's the most heavily and speedily adopted tool in the market from lab services. And that's why we needed to make it licensed, not to make money, don't get it wrong, please. We needed to make it licensed because we needed some budget to keep things going. We needed to hire a specific developer for this tool. Other tool I'm going to mention is Provisioning Toolkit. It is about provisioning bare metal systems from scratch. You can deploy virtual AI servers or client partitions, including the operating system and the configurations on top. We will talk about individual tools later in details. The third tool I'm going to talk about is the SR-IOV Migration tool. Single root IO virtualization is a new technology in the market and gaining speed in the market, and most clients require some assistance in migrating their virtual Ethernet connectivity to SR-IOV connectivity. We have a tool for that to do live migration of the IP addresses. We'll talk about that a little bit. And the fourth one in the migration category would be Virtual SCSI Mpib migration tool. If you have a client, or if you are a client where you have lots of virtual SCSI connectivity and you are looking forward to switch to Mpib, which is a painful process, because if you have a large set of partitions, we have a tool to automate the process, make it simpler. Okay. Next category, I would say the monitoring category. The first one I'm going to mention is Capacity On Demand dashboard, which is specifically developed to monitor capacity on demand utilization across your systems and provide insight around your usage, burn rates, and how much capacity you have left with. Second tool is PowerView. It's a dashboard, health check dashboard, where we provide scripts to collect data from your systems to a single endpoint, where we create a series of checks and provide compliance validation at the end of the day with a nice looking dashboard. Third one is PowerDraw. It's a tool to capture the configuration items from your power systems, and we can create scalable vector graphic files where we can see your network, storage, or overall system connectivity layout in details. Last one in this monitoring section, I would say the proactive monitoring with Promon. It was earlier than the PowerView. PowerView is fairly recent, I would say, but the Promon has been there for several years. It is intended to capture information from your systems on a daily basis and run audits to give you some reports at the end of the day against your configuration items, the attributes, any changes, deviations from your configuration. It will be sent to you over an email. Next category is capacity planning. It is specifically designed to customer utilization data analysis and providing right sizing for partitions and system planning in terms of capacity, but it started evolving from that a couple of years back. It was first about providing right sizing for the partitions, and then we needed a component on top of it to make server consolidation studies and analysis. And then later, with the announcement of Power Enterprise Tools 2.0, we evolved this tool into capacity planning tool, meter capacity modeling tool, where we can assess the utilization information of the client systems and the workloads, make a calculated assumption and finding the optimal base number of licenses for Tools 2.0. We will go into individual one of them. I will try to spend a couple of minutes in each of them. Please ask the questions in the chat window, and if there is an urgent one, we can stop and I can try to answer that. Otherwise, I will try to answer all the questions at the end of the session. First tool is the LPM and SRR Automation Toolkit. This toolkit is started being developed in 2004. It is the most heavily adopted tool in the market from lab services. And over the course of years, it has evolved dramatically. It is mainly intended to do live partition mobility and simplified remote restart operations in a designed, automated, and rolling back scenarios. Okay, you can plan your LPM or SRR automations. You can automate the process in the tool, and you can roll those partitions back to their originating server whenever you need to. It is not just moving the partitions back wherever they come from, it is also as is configuration as it was before, with exact configuration, slot IDs, mappings. It will be moving back to the as is configuration. This tool supports Power 7 Plus onwards, Power 7, 8, 9, and it will be supporting Power 10 hopefully when the time comes. Can be installed on AIX Windows or Linux platforms. It is written in Java runtime environment. All it needs is Java runtime environment 1.7 or 1.8. I personally can run it on my MacBook, so it only requires Java runtime. It is delivered as a single package zip file. It contains all the code packages needed to run. It is so simple to deploy. I will demonstrate you today at the end of the presentation. This tool doesn't do anything other than that whatever available on HMC mostly. We only communicate with your HMC through SSH connectivity, running HMC CLI commands. So in other words, normally whatever you needed to do to conduct your LPM or SRR operations in the HMC command line, the toolkit simplifies it for you and runs the command on your behalf. There are no need for agents or access to the virtual layer server or client partitions. It only takes a couple of minutes to install and start using the tool. You will get to see. What it does, you can move many partitions at a time, and the tool remembers where they need to go back to. You can customize individual operations, or you can apply customizations across the board for the lots of mobility operations at the same time without becoming an HMC command line expert. If you had to deal with manually yourself in the HMC command line, some parameters, some syntax might be really complex. You can plan your partition moves days ahead or weeks ahead in advance, and when the time comes, you can just execute your plan, click and go during your maintenance, or you can hand over your plans to your colleague to be executed at a certain time. Or beyond that, you can even schedule operations in the tool, so the tool can automatically start the operations on your behalf. At the end of the day, when everything is finished, either maintenance or migrations, you still have the option to move the partitions back to their originating server. Over the course of years, we are evolving the tool and we are implementing the new enhancements coming from PowerVM and HMC development. So we started supporting new LPM and SRR features, whatever they might be. We try to keep up with them, and we provide a UI for SRR operations. You might be aware that you can enable SRR capability per partition on the HMC UI. But when the time comes, if something happens to your system and you need to initiate simplified remote restart operations, you have to go to the HMC command line. There is no UI for this. So we provide a UI in the tool, which is simple. Beyond that, this is what is not available on HMC. We provide the ability to automate simplified remote restart operations in the tool. So the tool, when you configure it, can monitor the health status of your power systems, and if you enabled it, it can automatically start SRR operations when the machines fail. Okay, and similar to LPM, we have the ability to roll back to the originating servers after SRR operations. We also support LDAP authentication. We support integration with the Enterprise Host version 1. We have the ability to run scripts before and after operations, and we have additional capabilities in the tool as you go. This is the tool main screen. This is using the HTTPS SSL encrypted communications using port 8443, which is customizable. And this is the login screen. Default user is capital A admin. The password is the same. When you log in, you will get to see a screen like this. This is the latest version, latest release, where we can do LPM mobility operations here, and whatever we have moved with the tool will be shown in the LPM return screen. The only partitions that will be shown here will be the ones you have moved with the tool. The third button is simplified remote restart, where you can do this remote restart operations. Fourth button is where you can see the automated remote restart configurations within the tool. And there are other options in the tool we will get to see later on. When you click on LPM move, you can select whole system, entire machine, or individual partitions to move from. And on the right hand side, you can select multiple destination frames, one or multiples. There are additional options like loom validation enablement or ignoring the Ethernet communication problems, whatever support in the HMC command line are here. On the left hand side, we have a dashboard to show you how many partitions, how much resources required on the target, and depending on your selection on the target, we also show you destination system resources. And when you click next, it starts validating every single option, removing individual partitions, the individual different selections, and showing you the validation options at the end. Optionally, we have the button here, import button here. If you have exported any plans before, you can import and execute your plan right here in the first screen. When you click next, it takes you to the validation screen, shows the individual partitions here and their source system and validated target system and success status. If it's success, if it's green, it means validation is successful. We can move this partition to either this frame or that frame. I know these names are similar. This is 4 Bravo, sorry, this is 4 Delta. Okay, 4 Bravo, 4 Delta, 2 different frames. So this partition can be moved to either frame. If you like, you can export these results to an Excel sheet, or you can start revalidating the only ones with the error, because if it may not always be successful here. Some partitions might throw an error message here with red color. You may want to export the results and see the details of messages. Maybe hand over the Excel sheet to your colleague. Hey, Jack, can you please review these problems and fix them, RMC issues, etc. Okay, the tool exploits the fact that HMC command line is powerful and can run multiple operations at a time, and the power systems can support multiple validations or LPM operations at a time. So the toolkit runs 8 LPAR concurrent validations at a time for you. If you are moving lots of partitions, tens of thousands, hundreds of partitions, this tool becomes invaluable. Okay. So after the validation, we get to what we call placement screen. We show individual partitions and their resources, and you have the option to select which destination frame you will set it to. Okay, and when you play with the settings, it is automatically reflected to the dashboard here how much resources will be left on the target frame. There are additional options in the tool. Once you get the LPM enablement, LPM toolkit, engagement with lab services, we cover them all with you. And per partition basis, we have the settings button here where we can select speed settings, for an example, concurrency settings, or mover service partition overrides, virtual Ethernet switch override. There are different options that are applicable in the HMC command line and available to you. If you like, you can click on Start Move here to start operations in the list. The toolkit will start moving partitions concurrently, 8 operations at a time, which is configurable, by the way. Or you want to export the plan to be run later, that is fine. Or you want to schedule it within the tool, that is also fine. Okay. If you start operations, it will be shown like this. It will show each operation, each partition mobility, source server, source LPAR ID, target frame, and target LPAR ID, which might be particularly important for IBMI clients because licensing models requires LPAR ID to be identical sometimes, and move status and time remaining. You see the progress of individual operations. If you have lots of partitions in the list, 8 operations will kick in, and whenever an operation finishes, the next in the list will be automatically triggered for you. So it automates everything. We have online resources where you can check. We have a community website. It is ibm.biz/LPM_SRR_tool. I suggest you to check that out, where we have some documentation and information and FAQ section. Plus, my colleague in the US, which is the owner of the tool, Bob Foster, has a YouTube channel. You can find it as BobTube, and he has recorded some videos regarding the LPM tool. Next tool is the Provisioning Toolkit version 8, which is the latest iteration of the tool. this tool is very useful for every client which are not automating their process. Back in the day when I was not an IBMer, I was a system admin for a big banking environment, and I was managing close to 1,000 AX partitions. It was around 800 when I left the company. And to do that, we were writing lots of scripts, right? I'm quite sure, and I know for a fact, lots of clients and business partners do the same. We are writing our own automation scripts to do implementation, deploying the virtual AI servers, partitions, so on and so forth. The challenge has been consistency across the world or the different data centers or systems. The scripts might be outdated and new systems might require additional flags, etc. So the business challenge has always been clients struggling with consistency in the build process when deploying their virtual AI servers or their clients. Differences in configuration depend on who built the system. It might be your colleague or your colleague who has left the company already, or might be business partner, or when it was deployed. Attempts to develop in-house scripts and automation is a struggle over time, adding new features and keeping the workload together. So the solution is make it centralized from lab services. We had started developing this tool for a client engagement in North America, but over time, the clients needed some additional features to be added to the tool. So we started with a build frame script. Over time, it became a huge framework we will get to see in details in a couple of slides. And key benefits, it reduces the manual errors associated with the build process and create a repeatable iterative methodology for deploying new servers, partitions. You can deploy bare metal system. It might be a new machine. You might have purchased multiple new systems, and we can deploy the same skeleton across those systems. Beyond that, we can capture existing system configuration with capture frame and deploy them to the new servers. So it can be used for DR, data replication purposes. Don't forget, some people ask me, hey, what is the difference between PowerVC and this? PowerVC also does the deployment. PowerVC requires the virtualization to be implemented in place, right? Without virtual AI servers and virtualization configured, you cannot use PowerVC. With this tool, you can start bare metal. You can use this tool to deploy new systems, make it ready for PowerVC utilization with a single click, okay? So this is the manual provisioning overflow, NIM server, HMC, we are in between, we are communicating, contacting over the UI or the command line using my scripts, etc. It is a repetitive process. And starting with the toolkit, we've developed the build frame. Is the original script for the toolkit dating back to 2009 or so. It provisions virtual AI servers, not just the partition profiles, but also we have the ability to deploy from NIM server. We can deploy the MK-SysB and boot up the partition, and beyond that, we can configure the devices, attributes, and configure shared Ethernet adapters on the virtual AI server, which is really powerful. With a single script, you can deploy an entire frame and make it ready for productivity with a single click. We have a UI editor written in Java to make the build frame script. It requires a build profile, which is a skeleton of design, okay, and which has a certain syntax. And the toolkit UI is provided to make sure the build profiles don't have syntax errors. We also have a toolkit Wikipedia, single self-contained file, which has the embedded graphics. It's a large file with all the documentation and examples you need to operate the toolkit after we enable you. So the build frame, it accepts 3 different input parameters: build profile, config file, and include file. Build profile is a design pattern, config file is instance unique information, and include file is providing the set of frame-specific information. If you are deploying the same skeleton over multiple different frames, it is possible using the build frame. Build frame has 2 different modes, -F and -V. -F stands for frame level against the frames, or -V against the virtual AI server mode. In the frame mode, we do all the things we need to do on the power system level, validating the profile on the operations or configuring shared processor pools, virtual switches, and FC mappings, collecting WWPNs or virtual SCSI mapping, NIM operations. We can even further do utility functions like import login, import logout, delete partitions, shut down, activate partitions. So many things we can do on the frame level. Beyond that, in the virtual AI server mode, we can change the attributes of devices and configure networks, even do the root VG mirroring if the virtual AI server is configured on local disks. So we have a couple of use cases. I will try to speed up this part. The first use case is deploying the virtual AI server, where you would like to deploy virtual AI server's build profile using a build frame. If you like, you can do this build frame -p or the build profile against the machine and main type -f. It will do -f build, by the way, does everything together as a single wrapper script. It does a frame level operations, plus if you have defined any virtual AI server specific definitions in the build profile, it further does that too. So with a single parameter here, you might be deploying virtual AI server partitions and deploying the NIM, LPAR netboot, and configuring whatever you define in the virtual AI server. There are specific keywords like shared Ethernet attributes, definitions, Ether channel. Different devices can have different attributes. This is the UI build profile editor, which is particularly useful for identifying the problematic erroneous lines. You might have defined some variables and you have forgot to define whatever or use the other way around. They are all identified here in the toolkit UI. Second use case, deploying the virtual client partitions instead of virtual AI server partitions. It is similar to the previous use case, but this time you are only deploying partitions using build frame. This is the same thing. We can create partitions, create connections like virtual SCSI, Mpib, Ethernet, or virtual NIC, SR-IOV NIC configurations. And optionally, if you like, we can even assign it for physical I/O, and we can boot up the partition from NIM and deploy your MK SysB to the partition. And these are the client-specific build profile options. And if you are deploying new partition, especially if it's an Mpib partition, obviously it cannot be an end-to-end process. You need to break it down to the pieces because you need to zone the new WWPNs with the storage team. So that is why this is the process we identify. First function we do in the frame level is car, which is creating the partition profile, and then we can do VFC map to do the VFC mappings on the virtual AI server fiber ports, and then we can do WWPN to call out through the HMC what are the new WWPNs created for this partition. So you can send these WWPNs to the SAN team, they can zone and allocate new storage, so you can start doing the NIM operations to do the rest of the operation. Third is a reprovisioning, which requires a full framework where we can capture existing configuration, dump the data into a staging area, and we use another script to look into the dumped information, raw data, and provided by the guidance file, which is managed system file, providing me the target architecture information, which provides me the build profile to be deployed later whenever I like to. This is obviously a little bit more complicated, but you can review this process later on. And if you are interested in this tool, please don't hesitate contacting me. Last bit, in the fourth use case would be the LPAR decommissioning. This tool can be used to deploy partitions or virtual AI servers against new systems or existing systems. The tool doesn't matter for the tool. Or you can decommission partitions that you have deployed using the tool or without using the tool. There might have been partitions that you would like to delete. As long as you provide the relevant build profile, we can decommission the partitions using this tool. We have wrapper scripts to delete LPARs, and this is the syntax to delete partitions. This is the overall create, capture, and build part application into partition migration. You can review later. The next tool is SR-IOV Migration tool. I believe this might have some success in the upcoming years because clients have been asking me, how can we migrate my Ethernet, virtual Ethernet? We have been using shared Ethernet adapters for years. How can I do this without downtime? So dynamically adding a new SR-IOV VNIC adapter to the running partition. This is the first thing this tool does. It currently supports AX version 7.1 and 2. We've been looking into Linux version. I don't know whether it has been implemented yet. Second, after adding the SR-IOV adapter, we live migrate the IP address from virtual Ethernet to VNIC. It is a non-disruptive migration of the IP interface without affecting the workload. And the next one is removing the virtual Ethernet adapter from the partition. So there have been traditional network options for power systems. We can use dedicated adapters, virtual Ethernet adapters, virtual I/O server, shared Ethernet adapter, connectivity. Why do we need something new? Because it's a simple fact. SR-IOV is better and faster and low-cost technology in compared to shared Ethernet adapter. So clients would like to run high network speeds with affordable overhead. SR-IOV is the future technology. VNIC is the virtual adapter type on top of SR-IOV, and it provides increased efficiency, I/O efficiency over the SR-IOV technology. So the clients would like to use VNIC for this. Moving IP addresses seamlessly within AIX, there's an option in the ifconfig command which is not commonly known or documented, which is called transfer parameter. When you do ifconfig en0 IP address transfer to target interface, ifconfig command does it for you from one interface to another without affecting the workload. Okay, it is dynamic, it is on the fly, but there's a catch behind that. It requires some certain checks behind, and you should not delete the previous adapter right away. So the toolkit does these checks for you. This is the process. You have the partition with virtual Ethernet adapter. You add a VNIC device next to the virtual Ethernet. You move the IP address, migrate IP address from virtual Ethernet to VNIC, and then next, removing the virtual Ethernet adapter from the picture, leaving the partition with SR-IOV connectivity. Next tool is the virtual SCSI, the Mpib migration tool. I will not talk much about this tool because there are not many clients need this, but there are a few. I know some of them. If you need this tool, just contact me. Basically, it converts a virtual SCSI partition to Mpib with no downtime. Obviously, there are some limitations apply. If you are using Oracle ASM raw disk access, I cannot do LVM mirroring, so it may not be possible without a downtime. But if you are using LVM, if you are using JFS version 2, or if you are using GPFS or certain type of file systems like that, we can do live migration for you. We assign the Mpib virtual adapter, we do the LUM mirroring and mirror breaking to release the previous set of disks, and then delete the virtual SCSI virtual adapter and unmap the from the partitions and the virtual AS servers. This is the menu of the tool. We support the PowerHA, we support all type of storage. It doesn't really matter in that regard. It's a pretty straightforward process as long as the usage of the disks support live migration. Next tool is Capacitor on-demand dashboard, which is fairly new, and one of my colleagues in the UK, Richard Jeffries, started developing this, and I was expecting him to be here to deliver this section for himself, but unfortunately he's not available at this point in time. So this tool is particularly useful for elastic COD clients. Okay, if you have been using Capacitor on-demand technology for a while, you might be aware that you have to apply the keys on HMC, and it's a real struggle to understand how much of the Capacitor on-demand I have consumed already, how much capacity I have left with. This tool communicates with multiple HMCs and consolidates all the data into a single dashboard. It simplifies access to HMC data and provides context and insight to help analyze elastic COD activations. It shows you a snapshot of the status of each server, showing where the applied codes require refreshing, breakdown of individual server activation code with consumption rate, how much resources left per server, with a graphical approach, and numerical data is also provided. This is unbelievably useful for elastic COD clients. We also provide utilization overview from the system's perspective, resource assignment against actual and peak usage in each system. We also provide the historical utilization charts, trend analysis. This is the default view. It is the initial display provides the overview of the common processor information charts, displays the active and available COD resources for each server, and any CPU days owed against the current HLC activation are red flagged by here. And we also provide the individual data information, burn rate of each individual server, and available HMC codes here too. We also have capacity views, which is kind of dynamic. I will also demonstrate this tool to you briefly at the end of the deck. It shows the processor and memory tables and the HMC logs and resource assignment and keys here in this table. And yes, I will be demonstrating a few select tools at the end. Capacity on-demand dashboard is one of them. And processor pool overviews, we also provide you utilization information and configuration regarding the elastic COD. Don't forget, we are only communicating with your HMC. This tool only communicates with your HMCs. It is not internet connected. It is not communicating with the ESS. So whatever available on HMC, we provide you a collective information across your systems and processor pools. This offering is provided through IBM Lab Services engagement. It can be used through PowerDraw Cloud Voucher. Operating system wise, since we need to collect data from HMC, we need SSH access to HMC, and that environment will be AX or Linux, and we require just HTTP server to be installed so you can see this, so we can display the dashboard. Next tool is PowerView. It is a point-in-time health check dashboard. It is developed by a collaboration of multiple different lab services consultants across the world, where we have a script in lab services, what we call PCAT. We use that data collection script in PowerDraw Cloud engagements for performance analysis, health checks, availability, etc., etc. But we decided to make it more wrapped around this dashboard tool. We collect data daily from virtual AI servers and AX partitions, point-in-time agentless data using SSH connectivity or using the cron tab access, executed using cron tab, collects configuration and performance data from the partitions using standard AX commands, and all commands are lightweight, do not harm your virtual AI servers, they are non-intrusive. Then the data is analyzed on a Linux or AX partition. We need to have a repository somewhere, and there has to be an Apache server for dashboard creation. All of the components could be on the same partition, or they could be on different locations. At the end, we provide you assessment result with familiar dashboard format, where we have different priority levels with findings. We color code different sections, whether we have affinity issues or Ethernet issues, disk issues, etc. Obviously, green is all good. Red means there are certain things you need to pay attention to. And the default checks are there for individual sections, but it is customizable. If you need to add further different audits, it is also possible. It has three main components: data collection and analysis, and then the next section is the presentation. Those three logical components could be on the same partition, or this could be a different setup where you are data collection on the partitions offloading to NFS or GPFS share, and the data analysis and web presentation might be done on another partition. Or another type of configuration might be data collection can be done on a third-party NFS server, and then the data analysis can be done through that connection as well. This is the dashboard look. It is all dynamic HTML. You can mouse over to see additional information. This is very useful if you don't have any health check dashboards in your estate. Next tool is PowerDraw. It provides a graphical view of power systems. For many years, HMC has been, I was asking myself to the IBM, hey, why don't we have a menu on HMC to show me the individual configuration items of the power systems? HMC knows the virtual SCSI connections, HMC knows the slot IDs, HMC knows virtual Ethernet adapter numbering. Why doesn't it show the whole map? HMC version 8 started showing that, but before that we had this PowerDraw, which is scriptable, customizable, and you can automate this. You can visualize system virtualization design, document components as frequently as possible, as long as you want, and linkages, parameters for different configuration items. And even go beyond that, it is a dynamic HTML file. It is a dynamic file where you can mouse over individual objects to see the details of configuration items. You can explore and analyze and debug if you have any issues. Business challenge has been unable to visualize configuration items, lacking the ability to document key components in the Power VM design, and unable to graphically drill down the key elements in Power VM. The solution is PowerDraw. It has a layered approach. It shows you different elements from disk perspective, network perspective, and overall system perspective. Key benefits, its ability to view any level of configuration for documentation purposes. You can automate this in cron tab to run daily basis to keep a track of configurations in your systems. If something happens on your systems, you can roll back and see on which day which configuration item has been changed, and you can further on that ability to perform problem determination by using a graphical approach. It might be easier to identify a number of command elements mismatch in the graphical user interface. At a glance, it's a single script. It provides different views. The output files is scalable vector graphics, and using JavaScript in it, you view the files using a browser, and it provides the detailed information on click, on mouse over, on mouse out type of operations. This is the overall picture. Draw frame is a script where it can digest the collected data. It needs to communicate with HMC in the initial data collection, and after the initial data collection, we can digest the data and create output files and the graphic files that will be need to use in the browser. This is the network view, and this is the storage view. I will not go into details individual section. It shows all the necessary items, and each item is subject to mouse over, showing individual details per object. And this is the VNIC, and this is the overall everything together. If you're interested in this tool, I strongly suggest you to take a look at this video recording I had done last year or so, where I have demonstrated the tool. And it is a short video, it's not long, so it will not take much of your time. ProMon is another monitoring tool. It has been there for ages. It is an agentless, a single centralized monitoring server using a single SSH connectivity to multiple different endpoints. Why did we develop this? Because your systems might be deployed perfectly and you would like to keep it that way with proactive monitoring. And all systems always tend towards the chaos. You would like to keep track of what's going on your systems. Even with proper build and change management procedures, people still make errors. There are some errors associated in data center management procedures. So redundancy, you might have built the redundancy in your systems and properly verified during the initial installations, but it only protects against the first failure. Further on, failures might not be prevented if you are not monitoring your systems properly. Solution, the ProMon. It verifies system config, it alerts system administrations against any changes, and it ensures stability and health of the managed systems. Key benefits: prevents unplanned outages by leveraging the centralized auditing of multiple systems. It notifies the IT staff about looming or hanging problems before they become critical. And it provides real-time views of resource information allocation and system configuration settings. It sends emails regarding virtual server client partitions, different things, different audit checks are there, and that are predefined audit checks, and you can customize individual different audits as well. And this is an actual virtual server report. It shows you Ethernet adapter buffer transmit errors, or the if SCSI configuration items are misconfigured. Yes, this tool runs against entire environment once a day daily, but beyond that, we have the scripts that you can run against a single individual partition whenever you like. You can run the script against this partition and it might show you, hey, there is a shortage on DMA resources found on FCS3 on this partition, so on and so forth. This tool might be useful in that regard. Last section regarding the tools. How are we doing with the time? Okay.
We're okay. We've still got about 40 minutes of the session left.
All right then. So the last section is about capacity planning. Okay, it is all about migration and correctly sizing your target architectures. The first tool we talk about is the capacity planning toolkit itself, because we have a tool called capacity planning tool, and also within the toolkit set we have additional components in the toolkit set. So the first one is designed to give helpful insight to power system capacity and right sizing partitions based on statistic analysis and best practices of IBM and from the IBM lab services experience across the world from the performance consultants like myself. We try to help clients better understand their current utilization and plan for growth. I know for a fact most clients are accustomed to the LPR2RRD. We do the similar thing to LPR2RRD just for the power systems, but we tend to believe we might be doing more granular sizing than LPR2RRD. We try to give accurate sizing for migration from legacy hardware to next target architectures like Power 9 or later. We can digest any type of variety of sources, including NMON, LPR2RRD, Hmc, PCM, etc. But we mainly would like to rely on LPR util data because it gives us the more granular fine details of the CPU utilization information under the hood. We provide right sizing recommendations backed by the core performance team, and we provide target specific frame utilizations, and we can incorporate specific business rules or SLAs, clusters, HA awareness, active standby, failover capacity can be incorporated in this tool. When we are looking at the capacity planning, this is crucial. That is why I include this chart here. Correct data is much more crucial than correct analysis. All right, correct analysis is also important, but don't forget it all starts with the correct data. LPR util data provides us individual CPU cycles per CPU in an individual threads, in fact. But depending on the tool you are collecting and retaining the data is becoming important. For example, these are outputs from LPR2RRD type of output, or it could be NMON data collection. If you are collecting samples every 30 seconds, you might be catching the correct peaks. If you are doing minutely based samples, you might be not catching the correct right sizing information. If you are going for 5-minute samples, you might think, okay, I don't even need quarter of a CPU, whereas in fact we need almost close to a core at times. So intervals are important. Frequent sampling is suggested, minutes or seconds, not hours or days. We would like the duration that spans significant times of your business where your workload kicks in, right? We don't want to look at the data where it doesn't cover your peak utilization. And we calculate the consumption by percentile. Percentile is a concept, is a measure using the statistics, identifying and identifying the value below which the given percentage of observations will not be addressed with the assigned capacity. So in other words, if you assign 80 percentile, which means 80% of the collected data will be covered by the assigned resources, and 20% of the time we will be relying on the shared resources in the pool. Okay, so most clients prefer beyond 80, most clients prefer 90% to be covered. There is a threshold to play with. Using the percentile information, this might be one of the outputs, right? You might be looking at Power 7's core utilization percentile by hour. If you are doing 70% percentile, if my peak it is not about the peaks. It's about how many of the data collection points I will be covering with my assigned resources. Okay, but by looking at 90% percentile from Power 7 RPER to Power 8 cores, we can provide predicted core consumption and provide better sizing in this tool. How do we do that? We need LPAR util data in general, because in the LPAR util data, we look at individual time cycles, capped cycles, and uncapped cycles, which may not be visible on NMON or other type of information, and we can do fine detailed configurations. The Capacity Planning Toolkit, it has a Perl preprocessor to digest the initial input, and it generates a comma-separated common file format, and then we analyze that data using an analytic engine written in R language, which provides us output files like Excel output report or HTML files. So at the end of the day, with the Capacity Planning Toolkit itself, we can see the data center, individual systems, and we can click on systems, and the tool can show you individual partitions, current information, and propose resources, entitled processors and virtual processors. Next bit is server consolidation on Capacity Planning Tool. Using Capacity Planning Toolkit, we can give accurate sizing for migrations from legacy hardware to next architecture. We can consolidate using RPER scaling. This is typically used in migration planning or server consolidation studies. Output file is an Excel sheet where we can show how many resources might be needed in the end. And this is this set of scripts we use, and this might be one of the examples of an output in the server consolidation. If you are looking at the migration and you don't know how many Power 980 or Power 950 different type of architecture you might require, you can work with us and we can provide you collective input provided by the input data. Next, what I'm going to talk about is the Capacity Planning Toolkit metered capacity modeling. This is all about Power Enterprise Pools version 2. Power Enterprise Pools is a technology. If you're not aware, I strongly urge you to look into this. Power Enterprise Pools is a technology from Power Brand Offering Management, where it enables flexible resource sharing across systems for ages, and Enterprise Pools version 2 is the next version, started last year. It is announced last April in 2019. It started with Power 980 systems, and this year in spring we announced 950 systems, and in summertime scale out Power 9 systems can also be possible to put into Pools 2.0. In this tool, we try to identify the potential benefits of Enterprise Pools 2.0. Okay, we look at the historical data from legacy systems, do RPER scaling and utilization relative to target architectures. We calculate the value of how many base licenses might be required on the target. This is the offering label. This is the offering name, Power Systems Private Cloud with Shared Utility Capacity, where you might have multiple different machines with different utilization characteristics, and you license them separately. But in fact, when you configure a pool, we only care about how many total base licenses that you have across systems and how much CPU you consume across the systems, irregardless of whether you consume more than base licenses in one system or another. It can be, you can pool scale out systems together, or you can pool Power 950 systems together, or you can pool 980 systems together, and the utilization information will be pushed to the IBM CMC cloud. All right, and it does matter how do you look at the picture together. If you are not pooling and you are aggregating the data, an individual system aggregated together might be the worst case if you are looking at them individually at the server peaks. If you are pooling the data by minute and you can share the resources across the systems, then individual minutes does matter, right? In each minute, how much do I collectively consume might be, staying within a lesser amount of CPU. To identify that, this is one example in the Enterprise Pools version 2. To make it clear again, in Enterprise Pools version 2, you purchase multiple machines with different set of base activations enabled in the system. When you configure the pool, we activate all the hardware resources for you, even though you activated 32 base activations purchased, we activate all the physical hardware for you and we pool them all together. So we look at them all together as an aggregated utilization. In this example, 3 different systems, total of 384 different cores installed, whereas we have a total of 192 base activations enabled. If my total consumption is below my base 192, there are no additional charges accumulating. If my aggregated utilization goes above the base, we create meter charges per the client. So in that regard, we need to identify how many base licenses would I require in an environment. If I have 3 systems, for an example, if I'm planning to purchase 3 new systems, how many base licenses would I require? Base licenses have a pricing scheme, they have a price, and meter capacity minutes have a different pricing number. Meter capacity minutes are more expensive over time. If you always rely on meter capacity minutes, it might be too expensive. If you purchase too many base activations upfront, which will be waste of resources, unnecessary amount of investment upfront. There is the optimal value sweet spot for base licenses, and in this tool, we try to identify that. We collect LPM data from client, ideally at least a couple of months, 2 months, right? And looking at the existing system, RPF utilization information, and provide input target architecture information, incorporated with the pricing information available to us, okay, for base activation, static licensing model, blah, blah, so on. We can crunch numbers. By the way, these list prices, we can fetch them online automatically, but if the business partner or somebody can provide different pricing information, we can incorporate them into our tool. And at the end of the day, we calculate how many static cores might be required and how much it would cost. Whereas if you are going for Enterprise Plus version 1, and how much would it cost with 90% mobile, 10% static? And also Enterprise Plus version 2, how many base activations is the sweet spot, and how many base plus how many utility credits will add up to. So here, this is sweet spot. As you can see, if you are going for static in this example, it would cost $3.2 million US. If Enterprise Plus version 1, it might be even expensive than that one. And if you are going for Enterprise Plus version 2, it might be 2.8 million. It is far lesser than the previous 2 examples. In fact, in reality, I have been running this tool for a couple of different countries in the last couple of months because clients are showing interest in Enterprise Plus version 2. The numbers, the gap in between are in fact huge. Sometimes it is even the half the price in the Enterprise version 2. More on that, recently we have announced the Red Book, Enterprise Plus version 2 Red Book, released around 10 days ago. Since then, I've been getting so many messages across the world through the LinkedIn, Slack, Twitter, and emails. People are calling me, asking about how can we get to this technology. In this Red Book, I have a couple of different sections, and I have a chapter specific to the lab services sizing tool. If you're interested in any of these tools, I am the EMEA technical lead, and this is my information. In the Europe and EMEA opportunity manager is Beatrice, and in the UK, if you are in the UK, you can send an email to John Markey. If you are in other parts of the world, this is the link for you to find the opportunity manager closer to you. But if you are running into trouble, don't hesitate contacting me, all right? I will find the correct person for you. So I have half an hour left to do some demos. For the PowerDraw, I will not do demo here myself, and I suggest you to check the link in the presentation. All right, it's a couple of minutes, so you can check that. My first demo will be LPM Automation Tool. Remember that one? Let's roll back and see what does it look like. We are looking for something like that. So don't forget, this tool is licensed. This is the only tool that requires a license to be purchased. And other than that, it is just a lab services tool. What I'm going to do, if my connection is not dropped, I'm going to log into one of the servers in our systems in South Bank, London. Okay, this is the NIM server where I have configured the tool. In fact, I have not configured the tool altogether. I have configured the environment with specific toolkit user on the NIM, and I have configured the key exchange with the HMC, so we won't bother during the demo. But here you can see the folder structure. I have a demo folder where we can see the folder structure of the tool. Okay, all these binaries are in bin folder. It has scripts, etc., etc. But mainly, what I need to do is cd back and start the toolkit. When I start, this is literally the first time we are running the tool here. The tool has started. We can check whether it is running. Yeah, it is running. Yay. And when I check the nets.output, I can see the ports being activated. We are using a couple of different ports. 8443 is one of them. Next thing I will do is to open my browser, okay, and then go to this link. NIM26 8443 is the port, and /LPM is the address I need to log into. First time comers, it might ask for SSL. Because this is SSL encrypted, you may need to accept the SSL key. The password and username is the same, admin. Don't forget, this is the first time we are logging into this instance of the tool. It shows the version of the tool here. It shows welcome and help, etc., etc. If you click help, it will show you the date of the tool version, and the links are also here for access. Since this is the initial installation, there is nothing in it. You will get to see how fast it is to configure. First thing we will do is to add HMC. Settings is where we add the HMCs. This is where you can add users. HMCs, my HMC will be HMC10, and this is the IP address. Username is the LPM tool. I will authenticate using public key. If not, you can provide the password. When I do this, the tool will start communicating with the HMC. Let me show you that. In the bin folder, there is a log folder created. Okay, there are two files, LPM log and LPM error log. Let's take the LPM log file. First of all, nothing has been done yet. We have not communicated with the HMC yet, but it shows you user admin logged in at this time. All right, so click apply. Immediately, tool will start communicating using the key exchange and communicating with the HMC running commands. You can see the exact commands sent to the HMC. All right, since this is flying at the moment tail -F, you can see the commands and the parameters it is running against the HMC. And right. We have added the HMC. First thing the tool does is collect information. Let's go to the home page, and let's look at the manage section. It shows us the connected systems and their service processor IP address, their CPU and memory information, whether they're LPM capable, so on and so forth. And it also shows us the partitions, list of partitions, whether they are SRR capable as well. What we will do next, we will need to wait for a couple of minutes to this initial data collection to be finished. Every 3 minutes, this tool communicates with the HMCs and refreshes the data. You see, it started refreshing the data again. So to demonstrate an LPM operation here, the tool is useful to do lots of operations together. But before that, it shows you the number of HMCs connected, number of machines connected through those HMCs, and number of partitions available through. The first button we are interested in is LPM move. When I click here, I have the option to import a plan, or I can expand my HMCs. I can select individual systems. I can select entire system. All right. And if I don't want to select entire system, I can select individual partitions. I don't want to select this one because one of my colleagues is actually using that at the moment. But you can select individual different partitions, and you can select target systems here. Since this is coming from Warwickshire machine, let's say Lancashire and Merseyside, when I do this, when I click next, the tool, first of all, it shows you the selected partition resource information on the left and selected resources, available resources on selected target architectures. And when I click next, it will test whether this partition can be moved to this machine, and also same partition can be moved to this other machine, so on and so forth. All right, and individual combinations will be shown. Click next. We will get to see 6 different combinations because we have selected 3 partitions, 2 different target architectures. It shows success for the first partition against Lancashire machine, and there's a message. It shows whatever HMC thrown, it's a warning. Fiber channel adapter ID might be changed later, that is fine. And we are checking against the Lancashire is quite fast, and Merseyside is a little bit slower. I should warn you that this environment is a demo environment, and we are constantly using it and adding and removing stuff, so it is not particularly stable. All right, if something fails, please forgive me, right? And it is currently being used by my colleagues for other demonstration at the same time too. Come on. I was not expecting this. It seems there is something going on in the Merseyside at the same time, but it started finishing. And we can also follow what's going on here. Management console cannot maintain the virtual SRR slot ID on the target. Fine. And this particular partition cannot be moved to Lancashire. Why? Because blah, blah, so on. You can review the error message here. And the rest, the OCP partition is possible to be moved against each machine, and we will need to wait for this partition to be finished. I don't know why it is not finished yet. Hopefully it will finish in a second for all the purposes of this demonstration. It has failed against both machines. If I like, I can export status. It will give me an Excel sheet with all the details, okay? So I can hand it over to my colleague, or I can take it offline and look at that later to see which partition from which machine, source server and destination frame success state is success, validation state is success. It took this much time, and this was the error message. You can review later, all right? If you have fixed the problem, you can come back and click review, revalidate errors. If not, click next. It will take us to partition placement. You might be realizing that there are only 2 partitions shown here. One partition was not validated against, it was erroneous against any system, so it is not shown here. And for the IBMI partition, I see 2 different target frames available. For the OCP is the same. If one of the systems were not available, I could only see whichever systems available to be moved. Since this is OCP, OpenShift container partition, I don't want to move that in this plan. I can select it to none. When I move this, okay, you should review the right top section, which is the dashboard of target systems, and it shows the remaining resources after these moves completed. Okay, if you select Lancashire, it will be affected this and this. So for the IBMI, let's say it will be moved to Lancashire. Okay, and there are other individual policies. I can even go into further details for mover service partition assignments, IP addresses of individual virtual servers, etc. Or I can cancel and leave it to HMC. If I click start move, I will start moving the partition. If I click schedule, it will be running whenever I set it to. Let's click start and let's see what happens behind the scenes. Here, this is the command we are running on HMC. Okay, migrate lpar -om means migrate. And let me close this Excel sheet, and it is started, it is moving. The partition memory is 6 gigabytes. It is coming from Warwickshire, lpar ID was 2, and going to Lancashire with remote lpar ID 19. If this was a production IBMI partition, probably this would be a problem, because when the lpar ID is changed, there are some license issues arise in the IBMI world in general. They would like to keep the IBMI LPAR ID identical. And it shows how many seconds has been elapsed and how many time is remaining. It is not great at first. It is just an estimation, but in a couple of seconds, it should show a better ratio. And I will try to catch in the log file to see if I can see where it is collecting information. LS migrate, you see here somewhere. It was right here. Yes, LS partition migration information. It shows the bytes transmitted, bytes remaining. So it makes a calculation based on that. In my test in this environment before doing the demo, it should take around 2.5 minutes. So we still have around a minute to go for this particular partition. While it is running, you can switch to other menus. You can look at the LPM return. In the LPM return, it doesn't show anything because currently there is a running partition mobility operation. All right. And in the home, if you like, you can look at the history. We have been running an operation in the tool. It is showing running, or if it is finished, it shows the success or failure status. So let's check whether the operation is finished. Yeah, it is finished. Let's check the history. It is successfully finished, done by admin user, and it was a manual operation. It was an LPM type of operation. It started at this time. It finished in 129 seconds. So when I go to LPM return screen, I will see only that partition moved from this machine. All right. There are no other partitions shown. It is only the partitions that have been moved using this tool. When I click this partition, if I like, I can delete it from the tool's database, or I can click next to validate, or I can click perform LPM if I want to move it back. If you want to check the partition, it is currently running on Lancashire. Let's check on HMC. Let's check all the partitions. And my partition was IBMI. It is currently running on, I don't know which one. I believe this one is that partition. Yes, it is the serial ID. This is running on Lancashire. Let's move it back now and review on the HMC. Let's perform LPM. I am moving it back from Lancashire. LPAR ID was 19. What I expect, the LPAR ID will be reverted back to the original. Okay, because this is one of the benefits of the tool. It keeps the database, it keeps all the source information, and it applies all the necessary configurations, and it moves it as is. All right, so let's check the HMC. It is migrating running. It was running on Lancashire. It is moving back to Warwickshire here. Right, so this is LPM Automation tool. This is particularly useful if you are running lots of partition mobility operations, or you are planning for an evacuation. A couple of years back, one of the biggest clients in Europe contacted me and one of my colleagues thanking us because they had the tool and we have provided them performance options. How can they fine-tune their LPM mobility operations because they are running big SAP HANA partitions, and they run into a problem in their service processor or something. They needed to shut down one frame and they needed to migrate big SAP HANA partitions on the fly during business hours as soon as possible. They had the plan prepared in the tool. You see here, when you get to that point, instead of executing the plan, you can export the plan to be imported later. And they have prepared the evacuation plan and they have executed right away. They were able to move all their partitions within 40 minutes. I don't remember exactly how many terabytes, but it was like 8 terabytes or more. And they moved all the resources, all the partitions from the machine because they had the tool and they had a plan with the tool. So I will not go further in the tool. This is the tool, and we have plenty of videos in the YouTube channel on Bob Foster. And looking at the time, we have 15 minutes left. Last thing I will show, I'm not sure whether my colleague Rich Jeffries is here. No, he is not. So I will show you the Capacity on Demand dashboard tool. Here, this is an example. The client information is stripped. Here in this section, we show you the capacity on demand core utilization per system. Physical CPU is shown as green and permanent is dark green. CPU on return is red. If you have some CPUs that, you know, the capacity on demand activations are expired, but you are still grabbing them. And we have individual sections for processor. In details, you can see the capacity on demand used CPU days or memory. If you have some, you can see the history of what has been done in your pool of systems. And you can look at the resources. You can look at the access keys. We can drill down on the processor system pool level, default pool level, and also in the memory. Beyond that, we can provide external links. We have the Hmc scanner. Since this is a demo environment, we only shows you our Hmc information, but it is not relevant to this demo either. So I believe this is the end of the demonstration. I believe we have a couple of minutes left for the questions. Should I open the chat window to review the questions? How do we handle this?
Yeah, sure, Turgut. Thank you so much for taking us through that whistle-stop tour of all the different tools and assets, and also demoing some of them. So hopefully that's given everyone a flavour for what is possible. There have been some questions, and my thanks to Stu Cunliffe for answering some of them on the fly. So I'm just going to look at what's not handled so far.
And the first question was IBMI LPM. Yes, definitely this tool works for IBMI. I had delivered this tool to many IBMI clients around the world. Mm-hmm. Yes, you have answered that. I see that now. Sorry.
No worries. And also Stuart answered the one about Ansible versus Power VM provisioning.
Yes, you cannot find any better resource to answer that question. Thank you very much, Stuart. And
right, does PowerDraw show configuration to the power hardware level?
Okay, let me show you one example before I have collected before graphics. So this is, well, I need to open it in the browser. Sorry, where is it? Close this here. Open it. Say Warwickshire machine. This is the all view. Okay, I'm gonna close this for a moment. It is all configuration. It shows the managed system name. When you hover your mouse over the object, it shows you. I'm not sure whether you can see it. Maybe I should do it. Maybe might be better. When you mouse over, it shows you all the details available on HMC. Because don't forget, we are collecting this information from HMC, right? It shows us the type model, serial information, IP addresses, service processor configuration, and the individual capabilities of the systems are all shown. Similarly, if you hover on HMC, it shows you all the information on HMC. If you hover on your virtual AS server, it shows the information about virtual AS server. If you hover on the partition profile information, it shows the profile information. If you click on that, it gives you a pop-up for the individual object. It's more on that. If you look at on the left-hand side, those are the virtual AS servers. Right-hand side, client partitions. Sorry. And this is one of the adapters. This is Ethernet. You mouse over, it shows you all the details. If you mouse over the FC, it shows you that. It shows you which virtual Ethernet switch it is connected to, which VLANs are tagged, and what are the shared Ethernet adapters on the virtual AS server. You can clearly end-to-end map the whole system. This was the all view, which might be confusing and conflicting. Say, if you want to drill down for storage, you can just open the storage view. Okay, this is just the network. Let's open the storage view. And you can see, hey, this is my IBMI partition, and I have clearly 2 VFC host adapters and 1 virtual SCSI adapter, which is not connected to anywhere yet. And my slot ID is 17. It is connected to FCS0 on virtual AS server 1, and the other one is connected to FCS1 on the other virtual AS server. So you can see the whole map. layout here. I hope this answers the question.
Yeah, very powerful tool.
It is, yeah.
The next question I have is, how do the capacity on demand dashboard and Power View relate to the LPAR2RRD and NIMON, InfluxDB, Grafana toolset?
Right. So in Capacity on Demand, let's start with the Capacity on Demand dashboard. We don't use any InfluxDB or anything. We rather collect data from HMC using text files, collect them and keep them in text files, and just parse them and show them in HTML format. We use JavaScripting here, as you can see, and but we don't use any type of that. And capacity planning tool, actually, I can show you a capacity planning tool. In remote side, I have so many things in front of me. Yeah. So capacity planning tool, I can show you a couple of examples in the US clients. It doesn't relate to any database. Still, in the capacity planning tool, we keep the information in text files wherever you would like to keep them, and we show you the site information and individual machines. These are all configurable. When you click on a system, we show you the list of partitions and their current entitlement and proposed entitlement and the delta, and collectively over that system, how much you can grab, or you can, what is deficit in that system, you can see. But we don't use Grafana or InfluxDB, not here in these tools.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you. Can Promon generate SNMP or integrate with Tivoli for any configuration changes?
Well, Promon sends the output using emails, but it's all scriptable. If you have the means of connectivity, it might be possible, I would say. I haven't done it. I haven't heard of it because, to be honest, I am not the owner of that tool. The owner is in the US. But we can ask the question, if you can send me an email around that, we can definitely inspect and see what we can do. Yeah.
Okay, sure. I'll share the chat with you after the event, after
Perfect.
the session.
Mm-hmm.
And there was a question about whether the replay for this will be shared with us, and I've answered that. Yes, definitely. The presentation material and the replay will be made available. Hopefully later today, I'll send an email to people who've already subscribed to the series. And if you haven't, then just send me an email. My email ID is in the chat window already, but I can put it in again in a while. There was a question about whether these tools are available to business partners, and Stuart's answered that as well, that Lab Services can assist business partners in delivering these tools to clients. And there was also a question about why SRR and LPM are not part of the Power Systems license. And again, Stuart had answered that.
Yeah.
There's a question here about does it support IBMI, but I don't recall what the tool you were talking about at that time was. So Vikiath, if you have an idea of which tool you're talking about, please let us know and then we can answer it. Another question is about a link to the Power VM Provisional Toolkit version 8. Do we have a...
Which question is it?
So this is at 252 from Michael. Do you have the link to the Power VM Provisioning Toolkit version 8?
Yes, I do. But then again, we don't hand over these tools right away. We require an engagement to make sure we are training you, and only then we are leaving the tool with you. So you cannot directly download the tools. You require an engagement with Lab Services. If you already had the engagement with Lab Services and you have access to the previous version of the tool, but you require the later version, just communicate with me. Send an email to me. You have the email address in the screen. Just send an email to me and I will share the latest version with you. Okay?
I suspect that they are asking about precisely that. So yes, and if you don't have the toolkit already, please contact your local lab services opportunity manager as per the link that Turgut is showing on the slide currently. Again, I'll pop that link into the replay email I send later, so you'll have it to hand as well. Everyone will get that.
So I would like to answer one question about which tools are free. All the tools are free except LPM Automation Toolkit. Okay, LPM Automation Toolkit is the only one now that requires a license. We wanted to have PowerDraw licensing model, but the clients rejected that. Clients did not go after PowerDraw. So over time, we were able to convince the Power brand. So we are now within the PowerDraw free with an engagement again. Okay, PowerDraw doesn't require a license anymore. If you have attended my previous sessions last year, or a couple of months, actually a month ago or so, I presented in Branch and Learn, sorry, and I said that the PowerDraw is licensed. It was, but very next day it is announced it is not licensed anymore. It is free with an engagement. I wanted to clarify that.
Okay, great, thank you. So I think the other question's been answered. I'm just looking to see what's remaining. Does the tool keep track of CPU pools? I think this was when you were demonstrating the live partition mobility using your tool.
If you are referring to the LPM automation tool,
yeah.
First of all, shared processor pools are managed by Hmc automatically. What I'm trying to say here is, if you don't define any parameters with default settings, Hmc aims to keep the partition in the same pool on the target. If you have a specific pool on the source and specific pool on the target, Hmc puts the partition in the same pool. If you don't, or if you do, but the destination pool doesn't have enough resources, Hmc moves the partition no matter what, but it puts in the default pool. If you want to enforce it in the LPM Automation Toolkit, it is possible where we have the option in this picture. I should probably show you here, it will be faster. In the menu, we can enforce, well, unfortunately, it is not shown here. Where we can enforce which pool it will go into. We can enforce that don't put it in the default pool, or we can even change the processor pool on the fly, because Hmc command line supports that option.
Okay. Next one is, can the tool be integrated with some sort of directory server for our back model? Not quite sure what the query is related to.
Which question again?
It's 313 from Jasmine.
313 Jasmine. Can tool be integrated with some sort of directory server for RBAC model? If you are talking about LPM tool, yes, we support LDAP authentication. If you are talking about other tools, most of the tools are scripted, so it should be possible to integrate with an LDAP or RBAC.
Okay. The next question was about whether so it's talking about tools. Are they sold separately by serial number or enterprise? And I know you've just said that most of the tools actually don't have a license.
Yeah, all the tools are free with an engagement except LPM tool, and once you get the tool, you can use within your enterprise in the country. If you are a large enterprise and like IBM, and you would like to purchase one and use across the world for LPM toolkit particularly, there is a rule against that. But besides the LPM automation tool, all the tools can be purchased, or you can get the engagement once and you can keep using it anywhere you like.
Thank you.
But the exception is, not the exception, but it does not apply to the business partners. If the business partners would like to deliver the tool to a client, they need to get the lab services enablement every single time. It's not that we are enabling a business partner, it's just that we are enabling end client. So we do not vet business partners to deliver these tools.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you. Okay. Does this tool help in troubleshooting issues?
I believe it is referring to the PowerDraw. Yes, it does. Definitely it does. When you run into a problem, say somebody is saying have a problem around storage or network, you can drill down and see, hey, this is a Ethernet adapter and my attributes are like this, or this is the storage. Hey, what is my max transfer size, and so on and so forth. We can see this, and we can see the virtual layer server side. And yeah, we can drill down to identify what's going on.
Yeah, great. A lot of the questions that follow were to do with, is it free? Is it free to download? All of these different tools, and you've answered that already. So
yeah,
skip to. Okay, there's a few more, and we will continue with the questions in a moment if you're okay, Turgut.
sure.
I just want to, because we come to the end of the time scheduled, I just wanted to tell people that on the next session, so the October session, I'm still trying to organize, but I do have one planned in November. So November is going to be Tim Rowe, and he'll be talking about systems management for the people of today for IBM I. So what's new, I guess, in systems management terms. And if you know Tim from previous sessions, or you heard him from at other events, you'll know that he's really hot on demos. So he'll be showing you rather than just talking about things. So I hope that you can join us in the November session. That's the 11th of November, same time as today. I believe that UK will be going through a time change, 1 hour difference. So it will maybe slightly different time in your zone in November, but I will send details of that session with a calendar invite file. So it should be clear from that. So that's the next session. I am also trying to organize something which will cover lab services, tools and assets that are specific to IBM I. So watch out for that session also. And in the replay email, I will add information about upcoming events that I briefly showed at the beginning or prior to the session starting today. So I'm going to stop the recording for now, and we'll stay on and take a couple more questions. So thanks, Turgut, for delivering today's session. It was packed with lots of information, and thanks to all our participants for joining us today from all corners of the world, literally. Thank you.